War, dun, dun, dun. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Well, in his seminal work, The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, Adam Smith observed that empires often derive economic benefits from military led expansion through colonies, the exploitation of resources, and the monopolization of trade. When you own the seas with a large navy, you can pretty much monopolize all the trade that goes on across the Atlantic, can't you? Anyway, his insight suggests that war and warfare have long played a central role in the economic strategies of global powers. This idea has led some to assert that war is the engine room of the economies of empires and global superpowers. Now, while history offers compelling examples to support this claim, particularly in relation to industrialization, technological innovation, and global dominance, the broader relationship between warfare and economic growth is far more complex. It's marked by contradictions, costs, and exceptions. So, what we are going to explore is the historical evidence and economic theory underpinning this claim, critically examine its limitations, and offer a balanced synthesis on the role of war in economic development. Let's look at the historical evidence for war as a catalyst for economic growth. The British Empire provides one of the earliest and most illustrative examples of war-driven economic expansion. During the 18th and 19th centuries, Britain's rise to a global power, global preeminence, was closely tied to its naval and military power. Military expenditure catalyzed advancements in shipbuilding, metalworks, and navigation technologies. British dominance over sea routes and colonial territories enabled control over global trade and resources, which in turn fed their domestic economy and fueled the Industrial Revolution. Smith's analysis underscored how military conquest could generate long-term economic rents through monopolized trade and access to foreign markets. Similarly, the economic transformation of the United States during and after World War II stands as a powerful example of military mobilization fueling industrial growth. Wartime production pulled the US out of the Great Depression, validating Keynesian arguments for large-scale public spending. The War Production Board coordinated a massive reallocation of industrial capacity towards military needs, fostering technological innovations in aviation, computing, and nuclear energy. These wartime developments later spilled into the civilian economy, laying the groundwork for the post-war economic boom. The emergence of the US military industrial complex in the Cold War period further institutionalized defense spending as a driver of research, innovation, and regional development, especially in areas like aerospace, electronics, and Silicon Valley. From a theoretical perspective, these historical cases support certain economic arguments. Keynesian theory justifies large government expenditure, including military spending, as a way to stimulate demand and reduce unemployment, especially during recessions. Joseph Schumpeter's theory of creative destruction also resonates here, as war often accelerates technological transformation by dismantling outdated systems and incentivizing innovation. Furthermore, military-funded R&D frequently yields dual-use technologies. We can see this from the internet and GPS to advanced medical equipment even. Now let's look at the economic costs and limitations of warfare. Despite these historical precedents, a growing body of critique challenges the notion that war is a sustainable or desirable path to economic growth. It's destructive, is it not? One of the primary concerns is the opportunity cost of military expenditure. Resources allocated to defense are resources that are not invested in education, healthcare, infrastructure, areas that yield longer term growth dividends. It's guns versus butter. This dilemma is particularly acute in capital scarce economies where choices between military and civilian spending have direct consequences on human welfare and economic potential. Additionally, war frequently leads to the destruction of human capital, which is most important, and physical capital. While post-war reconstruction may boost GDP in the short term, it's often merely a recovery from prior loss rather than a net gain. You hear me? The European recovery following World War II, for instance, was impressive, but it should be understood in the context of the massive devastation that preceded it. In such cases, economic growth post-war is reactive rather than evidence of warfare being inherently productive. The phenomenon of imperial overextension further complicates the equation. Historically, empires that rely heavily on military conquest and control eventually confront the economic limits of their reach. The Roman Empire, the Napoleonic French Empire, and the British Empire all struggled to maintain costly military outposts, with fiscal stress contributing to their decline. The Soviet Union, despite being a military superpower, collapsed under the weight of an unsustainable arms race and a stagnating command economy. As historian Paul Kennedy argued in The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers, it is economic vitality, not military might, that ultimately determines global dominance. Overinvestment in the military at the expense of the productive economy can hasten imperial decline. In the modern context, the rise of China poses a stark counterexample to the war-driven development model. China's economic ascent has been characterized by trade-led growth, strategic investment in infrastructure and technology, and integration into the global economy, largely without engaging in major warfare. Military expansion followed economic success rather than the other way around. Moreover, the experience of many developing countries shows that warfare often undermines growth. In such places as the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, or if you look at Syria or Afghanistan, prolonged conflict has resulted in capital flight, institutional decay, and chronic underdevelopment. Because who wants to be in a war zone? No one wants to conduct business there. So eventually everyone leaves. Capital leaves, the institutions decline, and because of this, there is chronic underdevelopment. You can't develop a place that's always at war. In such contexts, war is economically regressive, leading to resource plunder, corruption, and humanitarian disaster rather than technological progress or economic dynamism. The relationship between war and economic growth is neither purely beneficial nor wholly destructive. It's contingent on time, context, and the underlying institutional capacity. In certain historical periods, war has indeed acted as a catalyst for innovation, industrialization, because if we have bigger and better guns than our enemy, then we've invested time and money into researching those machines, and then there's a trickle down effect into more civilian stuff. Now, the mobilization of national resources during conflict can spur technological development that I've talked about. It creates employment, it boosts aggregate demand. However, these benefits are often temporary and accompanied by severe human, social, and economic costs. In the long run, sustained economic development is more strongly correlated with peace, institutional quality, investment in human capital, and innovation driven by market incentives rather than military necessity. War may accelerate certain forms of progress, but it's unstable and it's unsustainable. It's not a good foundation for long-term prosperity. The economies of global superpowers may at times have been forged in war, but they have endured only when built upon the more durable pillars of trade, knowledge, and institutional reform. So, what do we say in conclusion? Adam Smith's early observations on the economic advantages of military-led expansion continue to resonate in historical analyses of empire and superpower formation. Yet while war has at times served as an engine of economic growth, it is neither a necessary nor sufficient condition for economic success. The examples of World War II America, post-World War II America, and 19th century Britain must be weighed against cases of imperial collapse, post-war devastation, and the destructive consequences of conflict in the global south. In today's interconnected world, the future of economic prosperity lies less in the theater of war and more in the chambers of cooperation, innovation, and sustainable development. Thus, while war may ignite economic engines, it rarely provides the fuel to keep them running. But those are just my thoughts. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to like and subscribe. This is Economics. Thank you. See you next time.